Hello and welcome to you lovely people. I'm Laurie. I would like to thank you for joining me on my channel. I hope that this video finds you well and healthy and happy wherever you are in the world. I hope if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, you're staying warm. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, I hope you're staying cool. Oh gosh, here in Pennsylvania, where I live and where I am filming this right now on January 21st, I think it's January 21st, and I believe it's 3 degrees Fahrenheit, which I looked up, I think is negative 14 in Celsius, or negative 14 or 16 in Celsius. So it's freezing cold here right now and very wintry and a little bit snowy, but the sun is shining so beautifully today. I need to apologize to all of you for such sporadic filming and video uploading. It's just, life has been very busy and it's been kind of difficult for me to find time to carve out to sort of plan for videos the way I like to have them planned, and then to film them and edit and things like that. But hopefully that will change. I would very much like to spend most of this winter getting back into a really good video filming schedule, because I have a lot of ideas I'm enthusiastic about that I really want to do. Sometimes it's just difficult to find the time to, do the practical part of it. So thank you for your patience and your understanding. Today I had the opportunity to be all alone in the house, and that never happens. I really wanted to film this video because this is a deck that I waited a long time before getting. It's currently an out-of-print deck. I love it and I've used it almost nonstop since I got it, and it's going to be re-released in a 2nd edition very soon. So that means if you're interested and you like what you see here, you can actually go and find out about it, which is not something that usually happens with out-of-print decks. So it's a super opportunity for me, and it's a great opportunity for you, any of you who don't have it yet. And I'm talking about, as you already know from the title, it's the Intuitive Tarot by Cilla Conway. I'll show you the front of the book. It looks like this. And the deck's been out of print for I think it's out of print for quite a while, out of stock most places, and it's been on my wish list. So last summer I had the opportunity to buy the deck, the book and the deck as a set, used, and for a really good price. And I really didn't know anything about what the condition that it was in. It just said, used, and I was so pleased when I got the package. And not only did it have the original box, all the original packaging, I don't have that here, and inserts and everything, but the cards were virtually unused. Everything was pretty much like new, and I was so happy and pleased to be able to get that. And since I got that, and that was in August, I want to say, and it's January now, it's been almost my constant everyday deck. And that sometimes has happened before in the past, particularly with a vintage deck or a used deck. I don't know why, but sometimes I'll just really connect, and then it'll be like the only deck that I want to use for a period of time, and I just kind of go with that because I think it's, must be for a reason. And then after a while I might move on to a different deck, but that really hasn't happened with this. It's been an amazing couple of months of working with this deck, so I'm very happy with it. I keep mine in this really lovely hand knitted bag that was made for me by Kimberly, and she sent it to me just as a gift in a swap that we did also last summer. I did a ton of swapping and fun things like that last year. It was great. So, all right, I want to talk about the Intuitive Tarot. First, let me give you some information on where you can find it if you're interested in getting a copy of the 2nd edition, which is in processing right now. So, there is a Facebook group. Let me find it. And it's called The Intuitive Tarot. It's run by Cilla Conway. I'll try to put the link down below, but I just want to show you kind of what it looks like. So if you go on Facebook looking for it, there we go. So that's what the title page looks like. They're on Facebook. for the group. So what you can do is, if you want to, you can apply to join the group, and contact Cilla through the group about if you want to pre-order a copy. Right now, I'm on the group, and we've been able to follow the process of when she was finishing doing all the digital images, when she sent it to the printer, and how it was doing at the printer. And we've been able to see photos of the box and the new book set up the way they have in the second edition. So there's a lot of good information on the website if you're interested, on the Facebook group, if you're interested in seeing some more pictures and things from the second edition. As I film this, I believe it's going to the distributor in the UK, the person who's going to be mailing out the orders. I'm not sure if it's a company or if it's an individual person, but that person, the receiver of the goods, who's in the UK. Cilla does not live in, she lives in, I believe, Italy. And so she doesn't live in the UK, but that's where the delivery is going. And that's where all the shipping will go from. And if you don't want to pre-order it, or if you're watching this, you know, sometime in February, March, April, or afterwards of 2019, I may have said 2018 earlier, I wonder. If you are, then I believe Cilla is going to be selling them on her website, which I think is cillaconway.com. I should have checked on that. I didn't, so I'll correct it across the screen right here if I need to correct that, and I'll try to put the link below. So those are all the places where you can get it. I don't like to leave people hanging, like if you really want to know where to get it or the information on it. I don't want to leave you hanging till, you know, have to hold you hostage while you watch the whole video to get the info. So you can, you know, run off and get that info right now. The way that Cilla describes it, the author describes it in the book, is that it's kind of a mixture of Jungian psychology, mythology, history, alchemy, Taoism, Kabbalah, divine, feminine, and goddess influences, and you really do see that in the way the images are painted. It was painted by Cilla over a 5-year period of time to paint all of the 78 cards, but then it took 20 years from the time she finished painting until the time she could be able to actually get it published. And it was accepted for publishing in 2002. And this second edition is being published independently by Cilla, and it's borderless, or nearly borderless, the second edition. I hope to pop in some pictures when I switch the camera around to show you the cards, so you can see a little bit more about that. It has a very friendly guidebook. The guidebook is being reproduced, I think, just the way it was written originally, in a small version that fits inside the box. I've already seen the pictures, as I said earlier, of the way the product is going to look when it comes from the printer in the second edition. And the box was was it a 2-piece hard box or an opening? I think it was a 2-piece hard box with a very small version of the softcover book inside, and the deck and everything fits inside it, and the inside of the box was beautiful. It just looks like the quality is going to be really nice, really, really nice. So I'm going to be showing you out of, obviously, the old version, but I believe the second edition is going to be very similar. So the guidebook is really very friendly, and it's very creative and interesting. It's a beautiful guidebook. Let me just show you some of the one I have is actually printed on a kind of pale purple paper, with kind of purpley blueberry sort of colored ink. And it's visually very nice. I believe the new booklet is, I think it's just white paper with, I think it might have purple ink actually as well. I'm not positive, but you can see for yourself if you join the group, because there's a video in there. So I just wanted to read a bit to you out of this guidebook so you can kind of get an idea for what the flavor of the guidebook is. And here's something that Cilla says. Let me grab my glasses here. Okay. She says here, if you feel that card definitions will help you to get to know the pack, consult the chapters entitled The Major Arcana and The Minor Arcana for traditional meanings, intuitive possibilities, and ideas on working with the cards as a self-development tool. Each card treatment also includes 2 small sections on interpretation, according to whether an image is upright or reversed. These are there purely as a starting point for your own work. Use them if you wish, ignore them otherwise. The intuitive tarot communicates directly with your intuition, so that even with no prior knowledge of tarot, you could read a spread very accurately, as long as you trust yourself to do it. Later on, she also says, once you start trusting your intuition, you'll notice all kinds of strange coincidences that can sometimes seem too far-fetched to credit. Carl Jung calls these synchronicities, and they seem to occur when we're on the right path. It's feedback that is much needed in our modern lives, which can so easily become overcomplex and stressful. So Cilla talks about something in the book quite a bit that she calls a dialoguing technique. So what she suggests that you do is choose a card and just kind of let yourself go. Just kind of release, relax, and let go. Allow your imagination to take over and begin to just start saying words out loud as you describe the image. She calls that the dialoguing technique, and it's just kind of a way to talk yourself into your intuition, to talk yourself through the stops that happen here in our frontal lobes, to kind of allow yourself to be open to what else might be back there besides very careful or precise things that we tend to do when we're thinking a lot with our frontal lobes. She says in here, I love this part, listen to this. Everyone will have a different way of getting to know the cards. You may want to jump straight in with a reading, or to spread the deck out and react to it as a whole. You may want to go through card by card and see how you react or not, getting to know each card gradually. We're going to do that in a few minutes if you want to do that. You'll probably find certain cards have a particular appeal for you. Some you may react to physically. Some may frighten or repel you. You may find it useful to jot down any reactions in the blank intuitive notes section for each card. I'll show you that in a minute. This will add to the richness of your own readings later. Stay open and relaxed. Don't censor your reactions. The cards work on many different levels simultaneously. All reactions are valid, she says. So even if you feel you've had no reaction at all, note that, right? And so we're supposed to note that before we move on. She says, I can't stress this enough. Every reaction, however strange or difficult, will have something to teach you, even if it isn't obvious at the time. So I want to read that again. Every reaction, however strange or difficult that reaction might be, will have something to teach you, even if it isn't obvious to you at the time that you experience the reaction. A non-reaction can mean that that card activates nothing in particular, or that you've closed down on an aspect of your past that may yet come to the surface. And I love that concept that when we look at a deck and we think, ooh, no, oh, something, repels me about that, a deck or an image or an art style, or even if we look at a deck or an image or an art style and think, nah, I don't know, that doesn't interest me. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't, that doesn't float my boat. Meh. I don't think anything about it. A meh reaction, sometimes it just means meh. Sometimes it means there's a reason that particular kind of closed off feeling is what came to the surface, or that particular boring feeling came to the surface, and it might be noteworthy to go ahead, pay attention to that. Maybe the boring response, maybe the meh response, maybe the no way response tells us something really important about ourselves that we know subconsciously or unconsciously, but isn't to the surface yet. And if we can kind of make a note of that, we don't have to study it, but make a note of it, pay attention, notice, right? Notice before you move on, because it may come back that that's something that gives us a good key to a bit of information that we didn't know before that's going to help us out a lot. So I loved that, because I have had responses in the past to different kinds of cards or decks or whatever that I thought, oh, no, no thanks. I'm just going to pass that by. That doesn't look interesting to me. There may be some information in that as well, in the decks that we think I'm going to pass that by. Even that may hold some important keys or whatever. Sometimes, I don't know about you guys, sometimes I get like really weary with like working on myself. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Do you ever feel that way? Sometimes I'm like, I'm doing too much self-improvement. I just have to stop and live for a little while. Like I can't do any more. Focus. It's exhausting, and you need to kind of move on to something else. And I love how even noticing but not doing anything about something can sometimes be a way that helps us later on. I don't know. It's like passive calorie burning versus active calorie burning. Did I just lose everybody? People are like, why is she talking about calories? I don't know. So let me tell you a little bit about the guidebook. For each major arcana, there is, let me show you a good, here we go, we'll do the Temperance card. So there's the title, highlighting it. There, obviously there's a photo. We have a brief description of what's in the card. So it's, a lot of times it's like actually a physical description of what we're looking at in the card. Then there are aspects of the card that may be beyond the image that we're seeing. Then there's some guidelines on how to work with that particular card. So it says here, working with Temperance. Then there are dialogues with Temperance, and this comes back to the dialogue technique. The guidebook, each entry in here kind of differentiates between intuitive guidance, like for uncovering something we don't know, or fortune telling, or anything like that. Intuitive guidance and self-development. She kind of differentiates between those two things as ways to interact with the cards. And they're all part of the same process. But that's what we see here. We see dialogue with Temperance, and we also see starter interpretation and then reversed interpretation for if you read reversals. I don't typically read reversals, but a lot of times I do look at those reversed aspects as shadow aspects to the card, and sometimes those will come out even if the card's not upside down, just because you kind of intuitively know to do it, or it comes up in a problematic position like stop doing this. Sometimes it's helpful to then look at the reversed to know stop doing whatever it is. For Temperance, for instance, it might be closed down possibilities, refusal to see opportunities, fear of being hurt, concentration in only one aspect of life, things like that. So that's a place where that might come out for me. And then finally, in this edition of the book, there's a full page where you can write your notes and things, as she had said earlier. So I'm going to talk a little bit, let me just talk a little bit about this first edition deck. Those are the backs. The backs for the second edition do look different. The size of this, the size of these cards, I'm going to compare them when we're turned around. So you're looking face down. When I change the camera angle, I'll show you what they look like next to traditional size tarot cards. They're kind of squat and fatter than traditional tarot cards are. And the first edition has white borders. I'm going to put a picture in so you can see what the second edition is going to look like. On the first edition, the cardstock has a light gloss, but not a laminate on it, just a kind of a naturally occurring gloss, and it's not a bad cardstock. Okay, let's swap around and let you have a look at the cards. Okay. So here you can see what the first edition looks like with these white borders. I do like the look of the white borders. I opted not to edge this deck at all because I wanted it to look really nice and tidy from the front. I'm not a very tidy edger, particularly when there are white borders involved. So I chose not to do that. I don't mind the white borders. I'm going to show a little picture right here of what the new version is going to look like, just so you can have some idea of how the new borderless edition is going to compare to the old bordered edition. I love the old white borders. I wouldn't cut them off, but I think the new borderless is going to look fantastic, and I'm very excited about that. It will still have the new one, as you can see. We'll still have this Yoni, Y-O-N-I, obviously like an oval image on each of the cards, because it's sort of we're viewing all of the images through this opening of like a birth canal opening. And so everything is being viewed through this birthing of these different images and these different archetypes, and kind of bringing that, that kind of goddessy, divine feminine that I talked about earlier into the cards. So we got the Fool. And as I go through the cards, I'm going to just share a little bit of some little tidbits and things here and there that I really like out of the guidebook that Cilla Conway has talked about in relation to each of these cards, and I hope you find those helpful as we go through this. So we've got the Fool here, and like a traditional Rider-Waite Fool, what are we seeing? Are we seeing the wisdom of the ages? Are we seeing the tragic clown blundering towards a cliff? What else might be hidden beyond this this oval opening that we can't see, that the Fool can see? what sorts of things might the Fool be able to help us bring into our own consciousness, because we can't quite see them. But the position the Fool has is that he can see them. Got some birds in the back and the sun. That's a very fun Fool card. So we've got the Magician, and we see this kind of Hermes sort of looking figure, and he's like an alchemist doing magic. And he's got the sort of dual nature of the Hermes, both male and female, or neither male nor female. We see this trickster and a dreamer, and perhaps he's weaving magic or he's weaving dreams. I love that Magician. The High Priestess, we see she's got the veils and she's got the pillars showing positive and negative energies, and she's got this emblem here. I hope you can see it. I'll bring it a little closer. There's a python within this. Can you see the snake? There's his head. Make sure it's focused. Ooh, I'm so sorry for bumping. And it was a python at Delphi in the ancient Greek mythology, where the breath of the python was that mist that came up through the crack in order for the prophets there to be able to, the oracles, to be able to see the future and give prophecies and things like that. So we see that she's got with her this python to make it sort of oracular and like the oracle at Delphi. She's beautiful. One of my favorite High Priestess cards. Let me just make sure it's still in focus here. Okay, and we've got the Empress, and we see this very divine feminine, and here she is. She's got a crown, she's got a scepter, so you can see this is goddess. Very, very high, strong goddess energy, very powerful. And then we see back here there's chaos, which shows that this divine feminine has the power to give life, but also the power to destroy. Very much like nature is, with that destructive and creative. And I like that her skirt has kind of a womb-looking feel to it, doesn't it? There's so many amazing things to see in each image. I think that's why it's so important that we go ahead and use that dialoguing technique, where we just start saying the things that we notice and the things that we see that pop out and that might be relevant for us. There's a lot going on back here, sort of a halo effect behind her head. There could be a lot with that as well. So, okay, so here we have the Emperor. This is probably the most problematic card for some people in this deck, and it's for obvious reasons. There's a phallic winged amulet right in the middle of it, and I think for many of us, it's sort of kind of shocking to sensibilities to see something like that. Why? I don't know. We see the Emperor up here has a diamond in his crown to kind of show that he's got this focus, and then we see all the strength of all these things around him that he's built. You see, like, it's good things, but also bad things. So we've got, weapons of war and an atomic bomb, and sort of here's a person floating around the moon like an astronaut, and we have these different scenes of how governments and those strong sort of earthly powers can be both positive, but they can be quite negative too. And this is a really good example to use that dialoguing technique on whatever response you might have to this particular card, particularly to the amulet, this winged phallus here in the middle. Because Cilla talks about if we have a knee-jerk response like, ooh, no, I don't like that, there may be a really good reason that we can kind of delve into and examine within ourselves. Is it that we feel rebelliousness against this kind of structure and this kind of government and that toxic masculinity and patriarchal sort of system? Is it, that, a rebellious kind of feeling, I reject that, I don't like it, right? Like, I reject that. Or is it possibly that we, have a kind of an unconscious kinship with this sort of patriarchal, institutionalized patriarchy? Maybe it's a little bit more part of our makeup than we realize, and when we have kind of an internal response to it, we're both responding to when perhaps this type of oppression has been used against us, but also perhaps to where we have taken advantage of or been a beneficiary of, even an unwitting or unwilling beneficiary of this sort of system. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack in this deck, really. So we got the Hierophant now, and in his mitre, there are all kinds of different symbols. Let me see if you can see it. So we've got, and the symbols reflect the sort of larger traditional religions of the world. We've got Christian symbol, Hindu, Muslim, Judaism, and here he has his staff and he has his keys, which are showing, you know, both earthly power and spiritual power. And unlike the High Priestess, let me just grab her again. You know, the High Priestess invites us in. So she's making eye contact with us, and she kind of invites us into her world. Look, she's got her arms spread out. Come in, come in, come in. And unlike that High Priestess, we see the Hierophant is closed off. His eyes are closed. He's not engaging with us. He's not inviting us in. We really don't get anything from him. Isn't that interesting? And this Lover's card, really like the Lover's card, it's very evocative and kind of moody and spooky and deep. We've got these joined lovers here, and they're kind of uncomfortable in their predicament. They're joined together, so they're very unified. They've got this symbiotic relationship. Do they stay in the symbiotic relationship where they're attached? Do they split apart? They're looking in two different directions. Do they pull apart? And then they've got the pain involved in being both connected and both pulled apart. And then we've got this fascinating shadow character in the back that kind of reminds us of the shadowy aspects of all of our intimate and other kinds of relationships. So it's a really fascinating card. And then we get to see these lovers again later in the Major Arcana, of course. So now we've got the Chariot. It's a very fierce card. He's got two wheels, so he's light and he's fast. The sun rays of Apollo coming out, as well as the sun on his helmet. We've got Ares, the god of war. Now we don't see the horses. They're just out of the circle of light that's there. They're still obvious there if you can see in the border, but they're kind of outside of our understanding of it. And notice that the reins are slack. Why is that? So if we're looking at this as us, is he holding those reins slack because he has control, or because he doesn't have control? And then he's got this mace, and neither one of them at the moment, he's not using either one. He's not using the reins, he's not using the mace. So we can kind of put ourselves into this and see where we are at and who we are in this. Are we moving along? We don't need to use any of these tools, or do we need to use these tools in order to get control over the situation and get where we're going? Because we've got this lightweight, very quick and fast vehicle in order to travel in order to carry ourselves in. And so what direction are we going in, and who's controlling that? Okay, so Justice is 8 in this deck. In the Rider-Waite deck, most of the time Justice is 11, and the Strength card is at 8. But in here we have kind of the first stirrings of inner wisdom. And if we go back to the Lover's card, we're going to see that we've got choices and kind of developing discernment of our situation happening here, where they're figuring out what direction they're going in, what voices they're listening to, who's guiding them, that sort of thing. And then when we moved to the Chariot, maybe I'll put this over here, because when we moved to the Chariot next, we were harnessing our will and how we express our will in the world. And so now we've got Justice at number 8. And we've got her objective gaze. She is not blind, she's intentional. And she can help us to kind of see what our unconsciously driven actions might be. And this kind of justice is the kind that sees, right? The kind that's intentional. So we can see the implications for ourselves of what our decisions are. For other people, we can see what we need to hold on to. We can see what we need to cut out. And it helps to refine our discernment. She's got an amethyst there on her forehead to kind of give her some inner vision. And she's got this two-way sword that cuts both ways. So this kind of progression then allows us to go into the Hermit so we can confront some of those things to see, what we want to hold on to. Our discernment shows us, specific things, and that helps us as we go into this Hermit card. So here we've got the Hermit. I think I'll just leave those here for a minute because I'm going to keep talking about the path that happens. So we've got this Hermit, and he's just got this tiny little light, but look how it blasts his surroundings. And just outside of the darkness, a snake, and I don't know, that's like a monster Leviathan. And we've got some wolves and a dark kind of cave happening right there. So then we move from this Hermit with his little light that casts a great big light for everyone else into the wheel. And we've got this mandala in the middle, some yin and yang energy. So we've got energy flowing in, and we've got energy flowing out. Nothing is static. We've got order going in to chaos, coming out, and then to order going back in again. So nothing's going to be still, nothing is going to be static. And as we go from Justice here to the Hermit, to the wheel, we can sort of see the flow of these energies happening. So we have here with the wheel, we have a change of alignment that was possible only because of what we did with the Hermit. Only because we were kind of confronting, going inward, going into the cave and confronting all of these things, shining a light on all of these things, so that we can have a realignment now that happens based on what we saw when we made judgment, then we examined it and had discernment, and now we have realignment. Does that make sense? I kind of love the way those things flow because we're confronted with the implications of our actions, and then it's time to make adjustments. And that takes us right into the Strength card. We're spinning around there, and now we're coming in, and now we've got this beautiful Strength card, such a pretty card. And we've got this woman who is on the lion, and they're almost one and the same being. She's got her head thrown back like the lion does, and she's very primal, but very strong and controlled at the same time. I love the way humans are portrayed. I've heard people say that it's a little bit kind of alien. It makes them think of aliens with the faces. For me, it makes me think a little bit of essence as opposed to appearance. So like what human essence may be like as opposed to what individual people's personal outward appearances might be, if that makes any sense. Plus they feel a little bit Atlantean to me, and that ties into other things that I like. So I do like the way they look. But we've got this beautiful Strength card, and so we've gone through the Hermit and the wheel, and then we get to the Strength, and this is where she's kind of persuading the id, our own, what we discovered when we went inside, to kind of work with us and not against us. And so here are we, and as we look at this card, one of my favorite things to think about is, are we the lion or are we the woman? Because in this case, the lion is the tamed, yeah, and the woman is the untamed. So are we the tamed or are we the untamed in this? And I really love that. So now I've got the Hanged Man, and he's in this kind of web happening of space and time. Everything's just completely turned over on its head. And you can see the movement we've got. It does a bit mirror that chaotic sort of coming in, order to chaos, and to order again with this Hanged Man. And here we've got this Death card, who looks a bit like the traditional death, sort of the Grim Reaper look. He's got red-rimmed eyes, he's been through the mill too, just like you and me. He's had it rough. And down we've got a cocoon, and we've got a butterfly who's just kind of partially emerged. The butterfly isn't all the way emerged from this cocoon. And this gives us a chance here to kind of think about, do we continue? Because we've got farther to go. And we've got the lure of this beautiful white fire back here for us to go through the flames and through this white fire and to continue on our kind of transforming journey. And this leads us to the Temperance Angel, because we went through the fire and now we come out in this state. And here the Temperance Angel is combining all the things, the dark and the light, the male and the female, where we start to work a little alchemy and make a little bit of magic happen. And next we've gotten into this devil card. We've got this very medieval androgynous looking devil here who's, you know, got very scary. It's a scary looking devil. And he looks like, look at him, he's trying to get out of the card. He's trying to like get to us. And we've got these little people down here, you know, this little, like our little collective shadow people down here in the fire, and he's sitting on this enormous brain as we look at our own personal individual shadow, and then as our kind of human shadow. It's such a fantastic card, really powerful. I like the starkness of the color in the inner frame as well, the inner oval. And then we go through, or is he coming through to us? See, ooh, that's scary, isn't it? I like it. And then we've got this tower. We've got a very modern tower. One of the things I think about a lot with the tower card, and I really like the way it's put in the Anna Kay tarot, but the tower in Anna Kay, she talks specifically about how this is a tower that was built that was wrong. So it's a tower that we put a lot of our faith and our hope, we invested something in, but it wasn't in our best interest. And it's a false tower. It's a false sense of protection or a false sense of security. And it needs to come down because it isn't really what is keeping us safe or what's making us safe. That's a false understanding. We're not actually safe. We have a false sense of security. Unlike other cards where we see sort of bad things being done to innocent people, a tower is sort of an example of when something needed to change. It had to change. The change is important, and the change was due. So, because we needed to grow from there. So here we've got the star, and in it we have this female figure. She's rising out of the sea, and her hair is waves. It's part of the waves, part of the numinous. She's the first celestial body that we meet in the Major Arcana. She's just a little light, just a little small bit of light to guide us. Beautiful card. So we got the moon. This is our second celestial body, and it's a lot bigger than the star, right? It's the biggest light that we have in our night sky is the moon. And we've got these deep midnight waters, and they're terrible, but they're very exciting as well. We've got light and reflection, we've got illusion, and we've got delusion. The light side of the moon, the dark side of the moon. So there's a level of directionality to all of these cards as well. And now we have the sun. We've got these two little kids down here, right? We've got the little sun twins down here, which are basically the reunited parts of our soul. So you remember in the Lovers card when they were splitting apart. Let's see if I can find that. We've got the Lovers card, they're splitting apart. And we see them back together, but they've come back together by choice, not because they're forced to, because they're connected, but because they wanted to. So they've got this splitting up and searching and then reuniting in the Sun card. And this takes us next to Judgment. Again, we've got sort of this medieval Judgment Day, rapture kind of images happening here. And we've got the earth that opens up, and the twins from the Sun card, okay, are here now, along with the Divine Child. So their togetherness, you know, we have the lovers coming together here as the twins perfected in the Sun card, and here in the Judgment card with this little Divine Child, and we can't see his face because it's on purpose, but we see the embodiment then of this vision. And this needs to be brought back to earth so that it can be made manifest. And so that's what the Divine Child does, is the unification of the two sun twins to bring kind of this calling, this hearing our call so that we can manifest that in the world around us. And we've got the World card, and here she is with, look at this energy of creation just all around her, and she's in this ecstatic dance to the galaxy. So this is the culmination of our quest, of this quest of the Fool's Journey, to unite the mind and the body and the spirit. And then we see this cosmic egg happening here, which is both unifying, and it also tells us, you know, because it's an egg, it needs to turn into something else, right? And when we move on, we move back to the Fool. So I snuck this back in a minute ago. We've got the Fool at 0, and you know, he's both the void, nothingness, and he's totality, everythingness, because that's what 0 is. It is both nothing and everything, and it completes this circle. And in the completed circle of this, the Fool is the holy fool. He's that holy, wise one who was so wise that he seems foolish to those who are foolish. So then, let me just move some things around and we'll start working on the minor arcana. So this particular deck was a little bit difficult to fit all into one shot and still be close enough to see the details. The cards are a little bit wider than normal tarot cards. This is a card from the Line Strider Tarot. And so you can see that it's a little bit wider than a traditional 7 centimeters by 12 centimeters tarot card. That's what this is, 7 by 12. This is a little wider. It's about 8. Let's have a look. So yeah, the Intuitive Tarot is about 8 centimeters, and you can see it's going to be shorter than a traditional card. It's 8 by 11 centimeters, so it's a little bit shorter and a little wider. If you have the new edition of the Guild Tarot, I'll show you how they compare. It's very similar in size, same height, and not quite as wide as the new Guild Tarot. I'm not sure what the new cards are going to be in size. I think they're going to be very similar in size though. And they should definitely be similar in perspective, because these are cards that are wider and shorter than they are tall. And I don't believe they're going to be changing the perspective on the cards. They'll still be just as wide, so you can see the images in the correct proportion. I've got the aces all up here. Now in this deck, let's see, here are the cups. So we've got the cups, and the cups kind of in this deck are about emotions and about the emotional and relationship world as they are in Rider-Waite-Smith. And we have a lot of symbolism of grails and cauldrons and wombs, and it's very much about a person who is very emotional person who operates out of their emotion and thinks with their heart, as they say, you know, or it might be showing us things that need an emotional response, need you to make this decision with your heart and perhaps not your head, events that would require emotional responses. That's what we're going to be seeing in the cups. In the rods, where are they? Over here. We've got humans kind of as natural tool makers. So the suit is very much about like things that humans are doing. And in the guidebook, Cilla mentions that to her, rods are an air kind of sign as the element that goes with it. I typically see rods as fire and I see swords as air. However, I don't see really anything in the deck that would change the elemental, my own personal elemental attributions. So I don't have a problem using this rods, continuing to use it as a fire sign, and continuing to use swords as air, even though in the guidebook they're designated differently. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. What I mean is there's no issue reading whatsoever. If you want to just say, oh no, forget it, I'm going to think of rods as fire, and I'm going to think of swords as air, they can still be read just as easily as ever. There's not a marked change. So then with swords here, and you know, the thing about swords, we've got this where humans at some point figured out that if they heated up metal, right, and they pounded it really hard, pounding it thin and folding it and hammering it and folding it again and heating it again and everything, they could make a weapon, a sharp blade that could be used against, you know, wild animals, or to cut down trees or brush or hay or wheat, you know, or to plow fields and to defend oneself. And this is the card of, or this is the suit of thoughts, because that's a lot of how we think. If you think of how a sword is made, hammering it, folding it, heating it, that's very much the kind of the process we go through when we're ruminating over something and thinking and talking about and analyzing it. So swords is very much about thoughts. Cups is about emotions. Rods is about action. And then we come to discs, and we've got coins. We also have some pentacles. We have some dishes, like, you know, types of, or gold coins, types of symbolism throughout here. And Cilla talks a little bit in the book about the Golden Dawn, introducing that star in the circle as the pentacle, kind of as this human microcosm. And all of the disc cards talk very much about material goods. So, okay, let's start going through them. So those were all the aces. And here we have the twos. Two of rods, two of disc, two of cups, Two of Swords, very much a Rider-Waite symbolism. Even with the Two of Discs, we're sort of creating some sort of a balance out of chaos. Two of Rods, person is looking out on the world. Here are the threes. This is, I think, an especially interesting Three of Swords. And I like something about this image better, even though it is showing a pierced heart. It's also, you know, it's showing how, it's showing a pierced mind, a pierced heart, and a pierced heart. And, you know, it's going down past the mouth, as if the words, the thoughts, the words, the feelings. It feels very apropos of that whole Three of Swords kind of situation or feeling that we might, you know, experience being in. Lovely Three of Rods also, where he's kind of pondering this magical cosmic egg that he's got possession of and what he's going to do with it. And we've got the fours. Beautiful, very mindful Four of Swords. This one's a bit of a sulky, even the purple, you know, kind of a very melancholic and internal and woe is me sort of mentality. I really like that in that Four of Cups, because don't we feel that sometimes? And Four of Discs is he's carefully holding on. You know, right here in this big city we've got behind, and he's in front of it holding the Four of Discs, so very reminiscent of Rider-Waite Smith. And this is probably one of my favorite Four of Rods ever, because we've got this circle within this wooden structure that reminds me of an hourglass that's tipped upside down, only we've got almost like a little Christmas ball in here, a little snow globe, a little looking glass of this happy life. And a man coming home, you know, a person coming home to their kind of happy little home with the solid four walls. Beautiful Four of Rods. Feels very fairy tale to me. Okay, and the fives. And we've got the sixes here. So Six of Swords, we've got a difficult voyage from choppy waters, hopefully to calmer waters. Six of Cups, we've got looking back, sort of nostalgic-like. I like the fact that she's taking one cup with her, because what is that thing that as she's looking back, what has she chosen the one thing to go forward with? So it gives me things to think about there. Six of Discs. Again, we've got this, like in the Rider-Waite Smith, a person who has, you know, lots of discs and money, and sort of going to be a bit of a benefactor to these people. And this very victorious, beautiful Six of Rods. We've got the sevens here. And so this Seven of Cups is a little bit different from a Rider-Waite Smith Seven of Cups, where we're often shown all these kind of choices. That we've shown a person who's thinking of all these possible choices, and some of these cups hold dangers and some of them hold temptations, and usually it's kind of seen as a card where maybe we've got our mind too much in the clouds, or we're holding out for some sort of a fantasy solution or a fantasy answer, or we're being very tempted by a snake oil kind of person who's holding something, promises out to us that are not attainable, and they're lying to us, and we're being fooled. The Seven of Cups is a little bit different, because we've basically got two figures, right? And the idea is sort of that one is a positive figure, one is a negative figure. And they're standing on either side of this fountain that's kind of shaped like a figure eight, right? And it's flowing through both light and darkness. And we've got the opaque sides, and we've got transparent sides that can be seen through. And you can see that it's flowing into, got this big cup up here right at the top. And you can see in this upper curve of the flow is a large golden cup from which emerges a brilliant white sun. And then so we've got that's one cup, and then we've got six little cups down here. And these figures are like looking very intently at one another. Or they may be kind of looking down at these cups down here, and they don't seem too aware of this great big cup that's above them. And in the guidebook, Cilla talks about that traditionally this card would be about choices and possibilities, and you know, lots of different dreams and things like that, and aspirations. And here we see this aspirational, dream-filled aspect of the cups. And she's showing us that we need to choose one dream that holds more power for us than the rest of it, so that we can put our energies into that. And the Seven of Cups can sometimes show us different aspects of ourselves. I'm reading this out of the guidebook now. So we've got this dark dreamer with the vision, and we've got this light kind of day-to-day person, you know, persona, who's got like very valuable things, but sometimes has kind of a repressive grasp on reality. And they point out all the things that are going to be difficult in this idea. So maybe in the end, we don't do anything at all. And how we need to find a unification of both this, you know, this inner dreamer self and this outer kind of practical self. And finding a way to kind of harmonize those things. And I love the idea of choosing one dream. And that's kind of slightly different take from what the Seven of Cups often is. And she suggests that when we're working with this image, to kind of sink into it and connect with these energies and kind of drop down into these cups. Imagine ourselves merging with these figures. Imagine ourselves flowing in this fountain, feeling the waters and the resonance of the sun that's in the goblet, and dialoguing with all these elements, and kind of following our own stream of consciousness, so that we can find kind of a really interesting inner dialogue on that. Okay, so let's go on to the eights. Eight of Rods, Eight of Discs, Eight of Cups, Eight of Swords. You can see that here in this Eight of Swords, this person is sort of holding themselves to this pillar. Beautiful, isn't it? I like the lack of faces. When there aren't faces, or when there are only, you know, just kind of the barest, what's the word I'm looking for? Allusion to a face, like alluding to a face, you know, or no faces at all. You know, not even any heads, because this is mostly about bodies moving forward quickly, right? Things moving forward harmoniously. Not a lot of thinking is happening, so we don't really need heads, figures with heads in that. Isn't that cool? Okay, so let's move on to the nines. Nine of Swords, Nine of Cups, Discs, Rods. Beautiful cards. I really love these. And the tens. You can see that they're kind of similar to, you know, Rider-Waite-Smith. This is, you know, the end. Someone's being stabbed. This is Ten of Cups, sort of this concept of happy, happy families. Ten of Discs, sort of generational. And we can even see the generations being repeated back here. Just infinitely, even to the point where, oh, I can see if you can see this. There are animals and things back here in this train of all these different lives. And this is a card that's very much about reincarnation, life path, things like that. Ten of Rods, and he's bearing his burden. Okay, so let's move on to the court cards. Beautiful pages. The pages are all feminine in aspect, not necessarily girls or women or female necessarily, but they're feminine in aspect. Beautiful. And even the directionality of these pages, I think, is really fascinating and very telling if you're going to do a reading. So we've got this page where she's the Page of Swords. She's all about thoughts and mind and movement and moving forward, and you can see she's facing off in this direction as if she's going forward. And this Page of Cups, who's very watery, and she's backed by all this water, and she looks so you know, thoughtful and pensive and melancholic, and you know, she's just kind of examining what's here in her cup, and is this blood in her cup? Is this wine in her cup? She's not even sure how she feels about it, so she's very much lost in her own thoughts and her own kind of emotion and feelings. And this Page of Disc, who's focusing very much on the practical that's right in front of her, and she's very ready to go and do those things that she has to do. She's got her beautiful headpiece on, and she's wearing a lot of jewelry, and very much part of, she's got this big building behind her. She's part of the world, in the world, moving forward, kind of materially in the material world. And this Page of Rods, who is facing us straight on, you can see. So she's sort of going forward to her thoughts. She's very focused on what she's holding and building and creating. She's very inward, internally focused. And this page is actually looking at us. So she's sort of like, all right, let's go. You ready to go? And we are ready to go. So Let's move to Knights. So I'm going to take a minute to talk about, you can see these beautiful Knights. And you know, just like in the court cards here, their faces are a lot more well developed than they were in the minor arcana. So we're back to kind of more intense, intentional faces. But then here we've got this knight who isn't showing us his face at all. He's a mysterious figure in chainmail, and he's very immobile, and he's got his visor down. This armor and the visor, everything, he conceals everything about this knight is being concealed. His emotions, his character, his features, even the gender, we don't know. It could be an empty suit of armor for all we know. But here around the knight, we've got all these strange shapes like little ghost people. You see that? You know, are these ghosts of people he has slain in his role as a knight? Are they an unseen army that he's part of? His sword is standing with these little ghost beings unattended, as if he intends to leave it along with all these ghosts and walk off somewhere. So here's what Cilla says from the book about this. The knight is often seen as the archetypal warrior, young, active, impetuous. Here, however, we see the real price of that, the real price of his profession. Here, however, we see the real price of his profession only to the degree that he withdraws from humanity and human values does he become effective. Okay? So the price of the Knight of Swords is, in order to be good at it, he has to withdraw from his humanity, withdraw from his human values. In battle, this may make him a good killing machine, but afterwards he's vulnerable and beleaguered by the ghosts of the things that he's been through, right? So to survive, he may force himself to become a husk, empty of all emotion, memory, humanity. Indeed, who has not shut down a little bit at times? The trick is to forgive ourselves and open up once more. So how you can work with the Knight of Swords, she talks about when you relate to this Knight of Swords, it's important to see how he affects you. I've been talking about him for a while now, so you've probably had a chance to look and see kind of how this does affect you. His facelessness may be attractive to you. You may see this kind of concealment as... Sorry about that. Okay, where was I? Let's see. So look at how you react to this, how you respond and how you feel upon seeing this. Remember what we talked about earlier, where if there's a card that you have a response to in some way, it probably tells you something about you. And you might not want to look at it, and that tells you something about you too. You might reject that or feel strongly one way or the other, and that will tell you something about you too. Does that make sense? You may perceive this as a good thing, that he's got all of these protections up, like you can wear any mask that you want to, you know? Or he may act as a kind of catalyst, prompting you to wonder about the passage between life and death, or even your ability to hide under layers of armor. Or do you see him as a mercenary, a killer, out of necessity, who is unavailable emotionally? And as the knight, respond to any of those issues through your dialogue. Discover what brought you to this place at this particular time. She talks about loneliness that's inherent in this card, someone who's used to cutting off their emotions, someone who's used to putting on different personas for different times. So isn't that uncomfortable? I find myself relating more to these faced knights. But I think there's probably a good reason, because sometimes we don't want to look at those parts of ourselves where we have had to kind of cut off, or not those things we have had to not think about, those things we've had to kind of push away and not really feel or interact with because they're painful. So very deep. You see how those are deep, beautiful and deep. Okay, so let's get on to the queens. And we've got these beautiful queens here. And again, we've got so much directionality, you know, the Queen of Rods just looking at us. Isn't this, I love this Queen of Rods. And I pull her a lot for whatever reason. And the Queen of Discs, who kind of tends to look backwards. So maybe this is a person who is a little bit set in their ways. The Queen of Cups is so open that she's even baring her whole chest to us. She's so open, she's so vulnerable. Her face is very open, and how high her forehead is, you know, she's not protecting, she's not protecting her forehead or her third eye. Sorry, I couldn't think of it right now, but of course this could represent either her third eye or her crown chakra. She's got a hollow there in her throat. maybe even how we sometimes feel a little bit of a lump in our throat over emotional things. We've got this Queen of Swords with a volcano there erupting in the background, and she's got a lot of things to do. And she, unlike this queen, who's showing us a lot of vulnerability and bare, she's quite covered up, isn't she? All the way down to her nose even. See how much, there's just so many beautiful things to see in these cards. And finally, let's move on to these kings. And I really love this King of Rods because he's got kind of a Green Man, Cernunnos sort of vibe about him going. And he's got this the motif here, kind of a helmet with horns. And one of the things, I'm going to again turn to the guidebook for this so you can see what Cilla talks about. She talks about the King of Rods having this, he has grounded all of his air energy and has thus doubled his power. So she sees him as a potent creative figure, his staff symbolizing his inner vision. And he's dedicated his life to searching for self-awareness and inner strength. And you may find him perceptive, intuitive, keenly aware, a charismatic leader. However, you know, is he sorcerer or is he savior, right? If negatively aspected, he may be enigmatic, arrogant, very sure of his own judgment, unreachable. His charisma then may be a convincing, calculated act to reel you in. So those are all the kings. Okay. So let me turn this back around and wrap up this video for you. Oh, I hope you enjoyed getting the chance to look through the deck. What I wanted to do is just do a quick little draw for us. For any of you that may be watching, I thought I'd do a quick draw on anything that you might need to know about the deck. If you're considering purchasing it, considering purchasing a vintage or used copy or swapping for an old copy. I'm really excited about the borderless. I don't mind these borders at all. As I said before, I don't mind them at all, but I'm kind of excited about the borderless. It looks like it's going to be gorgeous. I did pre-order because I love the deck so much. I pre-ordered a deck for myself so that I could have it as kind of a backup copy. Or it might be, I don't know, that copy might be the one I end up using a lot more, and this one I might save for good. I don't know. I don't really have too many decks that I save for good. I think I talked about that in my Out of Bounds decks. And then I also pre-ordered the second copy for my daughter, Grace, who has appeared on my channel before. She is a modern unicorn, and I just wanted her to have a chance to experience the deck too. She's seen me use it so much. I use it just for all kinds of things. Lately, I can't get enough. So let's think about what message you guys, if you're watching, need to hear from this. I'm gonna pick two cards. Let's see. So we can kind of look at the directionality and kind of read them together and see how that goes. So we have, interesting, we have the 10 of Rods and the 9 of Discs. And right off the bat, before I even pull the guidebook out or anything like that, I'm just looking about how much value there is sometimes in things that you have to work hard for. So things that we might not be easy. So whether it's finding it, because I'm pulling these in relation to this deck, like what you need to know about it or whatever. It might be that sometimes you might have to join a group, or message the seller in order to get your deck if you want to, or maybe you'll be tracking down a deck, like a vintage copy, because you like the white borders and you don't want the borderless. But so what I see right away from this is that there's some things are worth the effort. Sometimes things are really worth the effort. And oftentimes, the amount of effort that we put in, putting in a 10 effort yields us a high net result outcome. Does that make sense? So let me just grab the book and see what Cilla has to say. All right, so here we've got the 9 of Discs, this beautiful, richly dressed figure with a high embroidered golden collar, a coronet on their head, you can see. It does indicate someone of high status, and they're standing in an archway of a garden. They're selecting some fruit with rather obvious sensuous enjoyment, Rather than choosing the largest fruit, look, the figure opts for the most succulent fruit. It's a fine, clear day, and in the distance, 3 ships are anchored in a limpid turquoise bay. Are they? They are. Look out here. Down there, do you see? There's the ships out there. So the impression is that those ships belong to this figure who has a wealth of goodies about them. This reminds me a little bit of the 3 of Wands card, because oftentimes that's got ships in the distance coming in. And a lot of times I think of that card as the internet card. In fact, if I get a 3 of Wands in a question that is sort of along the lines of what do I need to do next, or a lot of times I'll be like, oh, I think I need to look that up on the internet, or I think I need to go ahead and order that in, because it's sometimes, you know, placing an order, waiting for your ship to come in, waiting for your Amazon shipment to come in, or whatever. So here we see her, or him, them, choosing the most succulent, and kind of their ships are already in. So that's kind of interesting. One of the things that she also talks about here is the 9 of Discs, you know, traditionally kind of is considered the abundance card, because the person's successful and they're abundant and they have, you know, gracious living and physical well-being. And you may pick up a sensation of peace, of being at home in your body, home in your life, home in the land. The ability to appreciate what's been given to you without constantly wanting more. But it may also be that a sense of true wealth comes from within. And the darker side of this card is obviously over-concern with material matters, vanity, arrogance, and success gained not through our own efforts, but a success gained at the expense of others. And she talks a little bit more about working with that card. Let me just see what she says for our 10 of Rods here. And I remember some of it because actually I just pulled this card, I think yesterday, in a reading that I was doing about something else. And I'll just tell you what I'm remembering from that is that we've got this figure who's bearing a big burden and he's carrying a lot of things. But if you notice too that to some extent what he's carrying is a structure around him. So to some extent some of what he's doing has built for himself kind of this secure structure of safety and security and things like that. So while it may be something of a burden and it was difficult or time-consuming or whatever to create that structure, it is also a structure. And those can be good things. You know, they're not just holding us in or burdening us. Sometimes those are protecting us. And they're a safe place. And they're stability for ourselves. And we can climb to where we need to get to because we have a good, strong structure to climb on. And so I think that's kind of true for this deck as well. That it's based on a good sound structure, not just with the information and the years and years that it took for Cilla to create this deck, interact with each of these images, think about each of these images. For me, I do think that's one of the reasons I value it so much, similar to the way I value the Weaver's Oracle deck, which was painted over 30 years, the Weaver's Oracle. The paintings are gigantic 6-foot paintings in that deck. Painted over 30 years. That's a really, really long time. And same thing with, these were not painted over 20, they were painted over 5 years. And then it took 20 years of all these paintings being in existence before they could be brought out and birthed kind of into the rest of the world. So I find that interesting, and I hope this draw was helpful for you. Maybe helpful as you decide, you know, if you're gonna order yourself a copy of this deck or not. So I hope it was very helpful for you. I hope you enjoyed this time that we could spend together. I'm really glad I was finally able to do it. And I send you so many wishes for happiness and for well-being and peace in your heart and peace with those that you love and your friends and the people that are around you. And thank you again for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.